As I mentioned previously, self-awareness is one of the most powerful things you can have as a human being, and your degree of self-awareness directly influences your friendship skills in all areas, especially when it comes to managing your emotions. There are really two kinds of people when it comes to managing your emotions. People who are able to be informed by their emotions and who use this information to guide their behavior, and people who let their emotions control them. A classic example of letting your emotions control you is when you get into a confrontation with someone, as we all do on occasion, and you let your anger or frustration get the better of you. This may lead to you overreacting and saying something you regret later. Needless to say, you have a huge advantage in life if you're able to be informed by your emotions instead of being controlled by them. And a simple way of doing this is to start tracking how your emotions change over time. The worksheet you'll be using for this section is called Tracking Your Emotions, and I want to explain how I came up with this specific design. About 7 years ago, I was going through a depression. I just broke up with someone, and it was a pretty messy breakup, and this was not too long after moving to a new city where I didn't know anyone. I would say that I generally go through some kind of depression every few years or so, and in this case, I could feel it start to take its hold on me, sort of like a weight slowly crushing down on me. And as we know, when you're feeling depressed, you generally don't have any enthusiasm for anything, and you also don't have much energy to do anything. But in this particular case, I really wanted to document in some kind of way how long I would be depressed for. I knew that it would be at least a few days, but I was really curious about knowing the shape of my depression, so to speak. Does it usually start with a sharp drop or a slow decline? How long does my depression usually take, and does it usually end with a sharp rise or a slow rise? What kinds of activities usually prompt me to start feeling less depressed? I just figured if I'm going to fall into a pit of depression every once in a while, I want to be more prepared for it the next time it happens. I've never been one for journaling, and since I had low energy, I created a simple way to track my emotions by creating a spreadsheet and printing it out. I made the paper have 5 rows which indicated from lowest to highest how I was feeling, and I would simply place a dot in the appropriate row how I was generally feeling at the end of each day. Over time, I would connect the dots to show the flow of my emotional states over the course of days and weeks. Eventually, I started to record what kinds of events triggered me to move up or down in terms of my emotional states. I found this exercise to be so helpful that I decided to share it with some of the members of my Meaningful Discussions groups in different cities around the world. I had no idea if they would even try this exercise, but to my surprise, several people sent me emails of gratitude. They not only printed out these worksheets, but they found them to provide great value to inform them of the shape of their emotions over time. You don't need to be depressed to appreciate the value in tracking your emotions, but the main reason I wanted to include this exercise is because friendship often includes an emotional roller coaster for many people. For example, you might meet a potential friend at some public event and you exchange contact information with them, so your emotional state is really positively affected for that day. But then you try contacting them and they don't get back to you, so your emotional state is likely negatively affected for that day. This is why it's so valuable for you to get to know your emotional patterns. This way you're not surprised by them when they happen, and in fact, you can anticipate them and reduce the chances that you will be overwhelmed by your emotions. I can honestly say that being more aware of my emotional states and how they change over time has greatly improved my life. I'm no longer as affected when life doesn't go my way, and I'm much less likely to be offended or disappointed when it comes to all kinds of situations in my social life. And on a personal note, when I do get depressed, it's for a much shorter period of time, and I don't go as low into depression as I used to. Just like with other worksheets in this course, I'd like to ask you to keep this worksheet in a place where you're able to access it easily, such as right beside your bed. It's actually a good idea to keep it there since it's a reminder to do this exercise before you go to bed. And don't forget to add a comment to identify what kinds of triggers greatly influenced your emotional states for that day. In the next section, we're going to dive into where you are stalling in terms of the friendship process. So I'll see you in the next section.